She arrived for the divorce with a newborn. The millionaire CEO sat there with his fiancée and was left in shock. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Family, your own family story channel. Heavenly God, we bow our hearts before you today. Please place your gentle hand over every woman in this family. Give her strength when she is tired, peace when she is overwhelmed, and honor when the world forgets her value. Protect her health, calm her worries, and reward her sacrifices with comfort and respect. She carries homes on her shoulders, love in her hands, and patience in her heart. Bless her in ways words cannot express. Let no woman here ever feel alone, unseen, or unappreciated. Amen. My beautiful family, I want to speak honestly from my heart. I know some of you left early before, especially during the prayer, and for that I am truly sorry. I never wanted my words to feel heavy or slow. I only wanted to send love, healing, and respect, especially to the women who are the soul of this family. If my prayer caused you to leave, please forgive me. I am here with love, not pressure. With respect, not force. Stay with me if your heart feels peace here. This is not just a channel. It is a family built on trust, stories, and shared emotions. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, I am with Mr. Peter. Let's start with love together. The glass doors of White Enterprises reflected Tiana Hall's image back at her, a black woman in a cream blazer, dark jeans and flats, holding a baby carrier with one hand and a leather folder with the other. She looked like she owned the world. She felt like she'd survived a war. The baby, Walton, slept against her chest in the carrier, his tiny fist curled against the fabric of her blouse. His breathing was soft and even, his brown skin smooth and perfect. He didn't know his mother was about to walk into the office of the man who told her to disappear from his life. He didn't know that man was his father. Tiana's heels clicked against the marble floor of the executive level. She'd been here before, back when she was Kendrick White's wife, back when she thought their marriage meant something. Now she was here for one reason, to sign papers and walk away clean. The receptionist's eyes widened when Tiana approached. Mrs. White? Ms. Hall? Is he in? Tiana's voice was calm, controlled. Yes, but he's in a meeting. Perfect. Tiana walked past the desk before the receptionist could stop her. The baby shifted slightly in the carrier, making a small sound, but didn't wake. She pushed open the double doors to Kendrick's office without knocking. The scene that greeted her would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. Kendrick White sat behind his massive desk, every inch the millionaire CEO in his tailored navy suit. His dark skin gleamed under the office lights, his jaw sharp, his build still athletic. He looked exactly like the man she'd married, the man she'd loved, the man who'd destroyed her. Next to him, perched on the edge of his desk like she belonged there, was a white woman with blonde hair and a diamond on her finger that caught the light. Jennifer Lawrence. Tiana had seen the engagement announcement online. They both turned when the doors opened. The blonde's smile froze. Kendrick's face went blank, then white, then something Tiana couldn't name. Tiana! His voice cracked on her name. She walked into the room like she owned it, the baby carrier rocking gently with each step. She didn't look at Jennifer. She looked at Kendrick, and her gaze was ice. I'm here to sign divorce papers. She set the leather folder on his desk, right next to where Jennifer's hand rested. I assume you still have them. Kendrick stood slowly, his eyes moving from Tiana's face to the carrier on her chest. He stared. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jennifer slid off the desk, confusion tightening her features. Kendrick, who is this? Tiana answered before he could. I'm his wife. Well, soon-to-be ex-wife. She adjusted the carrier, and that's when Walton made another small sound, drawing their attention. And this is Walton. Kendrick took a step forward, his eyes locked on the baby. The color drained from his face completely. Is that your son? Tayana said it without emotion, without softness, just fact. Congratulations, you're a father. The silence in the room was suffocating. Jennifer looked between them, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God, Kendrick! But Kendrick wasn't looking at Jennifer. He was staring at Walton with the expression of a man watching his entire world collapse. The baby stirred, his little face scrunching up, and even from across the desk, the resemblance was undeniable. Walton had Kendrick's nose, his mouth, his deep brown skin tone, his thick black hair. You were pregnant? Kendrick's voice was barely a whisper. Tayana's laugh was sharp and bitter. Was I pregnant? Yes, Kendrick, I was pregnant. She reached into the carrier and gently lifted Walton out. The baby was tiny, his head still needing support. His body curled instinctively against her. She held him like the precious thing he was, like the only good thing that had come from the wreckage of her marriage. I came home to tell you. Her voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. I had the pregnancy test in my purse. I was so excited I could barely breathe. I walked into our apartment, and you were drunk. Kendrick flinched. Jennifer's face had gone pale. I said, Kendrick, I have something to tell you, something wonderful. And do you remember what you said? His hands were shaking. I was drunk, I don't remember. You said, I don't want to hear it. Tayana's eyes didn't leave his face. You said I was suffocating you. You said I was worthless. You said you never wanted to see my face again. The memory crashed over her, vivid and brutal. That night, the apartment they'd shared, the one that had felt like home until it felt like a prison. Kendrick had been sitting on their couch, a bottle of whiskey on the table, his eyes unfocused and angry. She'd walked in with hope and joy, and he'd looked at her like she was the enemy. Get out, he'd said, his voice slurred but vicious. Just get the fuck out of my life, Tayana. You hear me? Get out. She'd stood there, frozen, the pregnancy test in her purse feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She'd wanted to tell him, wanted to make him understand, but the hate in his eyes stopped her cold. You're worthless, he'd continued, standing up, towering over her. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. Get out. So she had. She'd walked out of that apartment, gotten in her car, and sat in a parking lot for hours, feeling cramping in her abdomen and terror in her heart. She'd been so scared she was losing the baby right there because of the stress, because of his words. She'd driven to an emergency clinic at midnight, alone, terrified, and they'd told her the baby was fine. But Tayana had made a decision that night. If Kendrick didn't want to see her, she'd make sure he didn't. If he thought she was worthless, she'd prove him wrong by building a life without him. And she had. Back in the present, Kendrick looked like he might be sick. I said that? I told you to get out. Yes. Tayana shifted Walton to her shoulder, and the baby nuzzled against her neck, still asleep. So I got out. I left that night. I went through the pregnancy alone. I gave birth alone. I've been raising him alone. Jennifer's voice was barely audible. Kendrick, you told her to leave when she was pregnant. He couldn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on Walton, on the baby he'd never known existed. Tayana reached for the leather folder and flipped it open. The divorce papers were there, already filled out, just waiting for signatures. She pulled a pen from her purse and signed her name with swift, decisive strokes. I'm done, she said simply. Sign the papers. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you. Just sign, and you'll never have to see my worthless face again. The word worthless landed like a slap. Kendrick's face crumpled. Tayana, wait, please. She slid the papers across the desk toward him and carefully placed Walton back in the carrier. The baby made a small sound of protest, but settled quickly against her warmth. There's no waiting. There's no explaining. You made your choice that night. She looked at him directly, and her eyes held no forgiveness, no softness, no opening for redemption. I made mine. Kendrick moved around the desk, his hand reaching for her. I didn't know. God, Tayana, if I'd known. You didn't want to know. Her voice cut through his desperation like a blade. You told me to leave. So I left. Jennifer had backed away to the corner of the office, watching the scene unfold like it was happening to someone else. Tears streamed down her face, but neither Kendrick nor Tayana looked at her. Please, Kendrick's voice broke. Please, just give me a minute. Let me explain. Explain what? That you were drunk? That you were having a bad day? That you didn't mean it? Tayana adjusted the carrier straps on her shoulders. I sat in my car that night, bleeding slightly, terrified I was losing our baby because of your words. I went to the clinic alone at midnight. I went through morning sickness alone. I went through labor alone. I held my son for the first time and realized his father didn't even know he existed because his father told me I was worthless and to get out of his life. Every word was a hammer blow. Kendrick looked like he was being physically beaten. I have spent every day since that night making sure Walton knows he's loved, that he's wanted, that he's valuable. Everything you told me I wasn't. She turned toward the door. Tayana! Kendrick's voice was desperate now. That's my son. She stopped, but didn't turn around. Now he's your son. Where was that concern when you told me to get out? Where was that concern every single day you didn't come looking for me? I didn't know, because you didn't want to know. She walked toward the door, her spine straight, her head high. Kendrick ran after her. Wait, please. Just, can I see him? Can we talk? She reached the door and finally turned to look at him. His face was streaked with tears. His hands were shaking. He looked broken. Good. Sign the papers, Kendrick. Then we're done. I can't. I have a son. You have nothing. Her voice was final. You threw away your family. You don't get to claim us now because it's convenient. She walked out, leaving him standing in the doorway of his office, the divorce papers unsigned on his desk, Jennifer frozen in the corner, and the weight of his words from that drunken night crushing him under their truth. The elevator doors opened, and Tayana stepped inside, the baby still sleeping peacefully against her chest, unaware that his world had just been torn apart and put back together in the span of minutes. As the doors closed, Kendrick's voice echoed down the hallway. Tayana, please. But the elevator was already descending, carrying her away from the man who'd told her to leave, from the life she'd tried to build with him, from the promises he'd broken. She looked down at Walton, his tiny features perfect and peaceful, and whispered, It's just us, baby. It's always been just us. The elevator reached the ground floor, the doors opened, and Tayana Hall walked out of White Enterprises like the queen she'd become, leaving behind the wreckage of a marriage and a man who'd finally realized what he'd destroyed. Behind her, Jennifer Lawrence stood in Kendrick's office, staring at the engagement ring on her finger, understanding with brutal clarity that she'd been wearing the jewelry of a ghost. And Kendrick White stood frozen in his office doorway, his empire around him, his success meaningless, watching the woman he'd driven away disappear with the son he'd never known, both of them lost to him because of words he'd spoken in drunken cruelty. The unsigned divorce papers sat on his desk. His whole world had just walked out the door, and for the first time in his life, Kendrick White understood what it meant to lose everything that mattered. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. Kendrick's phone sat on his desk, Tayana's number blocked after the first unanswered call. He'd tried once, just once, and heard the automated message telling him he couldn't reach this number. She'd cut him off completely, surgically, the way she did everything now, with precision and without mercy. The divorce papers remained unsigned. He'd stared at them for hours after she left, Jennifer's presence in his office fading to background noise until she'd finally grabbed her purse and walked out without a word. The engagement ring she'd been wearing was now sitting in a small box on his desk. She'd left it behind like evidence of a crime. Kendrick hadn't slept. The sun was rising over the city now, painting his office in shades of gold and amber, and he was still sitting in the same chair, wearing the same suit, staring at the same empty space where Tiana had stood holding their son. Their son. The words felt foreign in his mind. He was a father. He had a child, a baby boy with his face and Tiana's strength, and he'd missed everything. Every single moment of that child's existence had happened without him. His best friend, Andre, found him there at dawn, looking like death. Man, what the hell happened? Andre closed the office door behind him. Jennifer called me last night. She was crying so hard I couldn't understand half of what she said. Kendrick's voice came out raw. I have a son. Andre froze. You have a what? A son. Tiana came here yesterday. She had a baby with her. My baby. Kendrick finally looked up, and his eyes were bloodshot. She was pregnant when I told her to leave. She was coming to tell me that night and I... His voice broke. I told her she was worthless. I told her to get out. Andre sank into the chair across from him. Jesus Christ, Kendrick. I don't remember saying it. I was blackout drunk, but she remembers every word. Kendrick's hands were shaking as he ran them over his face. She went through the entire pregnancy alone. She gave birth alone. She's been raising him alone for months now. And I didn't know. I didn't know because I told her to leave and she actually did it. Where is she now? I don't know. She blocked my number. She won't see me. She came here to sign divorce papers and leave and He gestured helplessly at the unsigned documents. I can't sign them. How can I sign them? That's my son. Andre leaned forward. You need to find her. You need to talk to her. She doesn't want to talk to me. You didn't see her face, Andre. She looked at me like I was nothing, like I didn't matter, like everything we had meant nothing. Can you blame her? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Kendrick couldn't answer it because the answer was no. He couldn't blame her for any of this. She'd loved him, and he'd destroyed that love with words he didn't even remember speaking. Andre pulled out his phone. I'm calling Rochelle. Rochelle was Tiana's best friend, had been since college. If anyone knew where Tiana was, it would be her. She won't tell you. She'll tell me enough. Andre dialed, waited. Rochelle? It's Andre. Yeah, I know it's early. Listen, I'm here with Kendrick and... He paused, listening. I know. He told me. Look, he just wants to know if she's okay, if the baby's okay. Another pause. I understand. I'm not asking you to betray her. I'm just asking if they're safe. Kendrick watched Andre's face, trying to read the conversation. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll tell him. Andre hung up. She's not giving me an address, but she said Tiana and the baby are fine. They're staying somewhere safe. And she said if you try to show up unannounced anywhere, Tiana will get a restraining order. I just want to see my son. You think you deserve that right now? The question was brutal but fair. Kendrick looked at his best friend and saw the truth reflected back at him. He didn't deserve anything. Not Tiana's forgiveness, not access to his son, not even the courtesy of a conversation. His office felt like a tomb. Jennifer had texted him overnight, just one message. I loved a ghost. I hope you find her. I hope she doesn't take you back. He'd stared at those words for an hour. Jennifer had been kind to him, patient with his emotional distance, willing to build a life with a man who'd never fully given her his heart. And now, she was gone too. Collateral damage in the wreckage of his past. Kendrick finally stood, his body aching from sitting in one position all night. He walked to the window and looked out at the city waking up below. Somewhere out there, Tayana was probably feeding Walton, changing him, holding him, doing all the things mothers do. And Kendrick was here, in his empire of glass and steel, realizing that none of it mattered. "I need to find where she's living," Andre's voice was cautious. "Kendrick, maybe you should give her space. She's my wife. That's my son. I need to know where they are." "She's your wife, who you told to get out of your life. She's your son, who you didn't know existed because you were too drunk to hear your wife tell you she was pregnant." Andre's voice hardened. "You don't get to demand anything from her right now. You lost that privilege." Kendrick turned to face him. "What am I supposed to do? Just let her disappear?" "She didn't disappear. You drove her away." The words hit like a physical blow. Kendrick sank back into his chair, the fight draining out of him. Andre's expression softened slightly. "Look, man, I love you. You're my brother, but you fucked up in the worst possible way. Tayana doesn't owe you anything. Not her time, not her forgiveness, not access to that baby. If you want any chance at being part of their lives, you're going to have to earn it. And that starts with respecting her boundaries." "How do I earn something when she won't even talk to me?" "That's your problem to figure out." Andre left shortly after, leaving Kendrick alone with his thoughts and his failures. Hours passed. Kendrick's phone rang with business calls, emails piled up, meetings were missed. None of it registered. He couldn't focus on anything except the image of Tayana walking into his office with their son, the way she'd looked at him with such cold dismissal, the way she'd signed those divorce papers without hesitation. She'd moved on. She'd built a life without him, and she was strong enough to keep building it with or without his involvement. That thought terrified him more than anything. Late afternoon, Kendrick made a decision. He left his office and drove to their old apartment, the one they'd shared before that night. New tenants had moved in, a young couple who looked confused when Kendrick showed up at their door, asking about forwarding addresses. "We don't have any information about previous tenants," the man said. "Sorry." Kendrick stood in the hallway outside the apartment that used to be his home, and the memories crashed over him. Tayana laughing in their kitchen. Tayana curled up on their couch reading. Tayana in his arms, telling him she loved him. Tayana walking out the door with tears streaming down her face after he'd told her she was worthless. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop looking for her. She doesn't want to be found. If you love your son, prove it by leaving them alone until she's ready." It had to be from Rochelle, or maybe from Tayana herself, watching him from somewhere, making sure he understood the boundaries. Kendrick drove aimlessly through the city as night fell. He found himself in neighborhoods he didn't recognize, passing buildings and parks and schools where his son might grow up, where Walton might take his first steps, say his first words, have his first day of kindergarten, all without Kendrick there to witness any of it. He pulled into a parking lot and sat there in the dark, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Jennifer had said she loved a ghost. She was right. Kendrick had been haunted by Tayana from the moment she'd walked out. He'd tried to move forward, tried to build something new, but his heart had never left that apartment, that night, that moment when he'd destroyed everything that mattered. And now, Tayana had walked back into his life, not to reconcile, not to forgive, but to finalize the ending he'd started. His phone lit up with a notification. Someone had tagged him in a photo online. He opened it, expecting business news or social media nonsense. Instead, it was a picture from a mutual friends page. The caption read, "Ran into this queen at the grocery store today, looking amazing as always." The photo showed Tayana smiling at the camera, Walton strapped to her chest in a carrier. She looked radiant, happy, whole. She looked like she didn't need him at all. Kendrick stared at the photo until his vision blurred. That was his family. That was everything he'd ever wanted, and he'd thrown it away because he'd been too drunk, too angry, too damaged to recognize what he had when it was standing right in front of him. The sun had fully set now. The city lights sparkled around him like false promises. Kendrick sat in his car in that empty parking lot and finally let himself break. He cried for the first time since childhood, huge gasping sobs that shook his entire body. He cried for Tayana, for the pain he'd caused her. He cried for Walton, for the months he'd missed. He cried for himself, for the man he'd become, for the father he'd never gotten to be. And when the tears finally stopped, when he sat there empty and exhausted in the dark, one thought crystallized in his mind with absolute clarity. Tayana didn't need him. His son didn't know him. He'd have to fight for even the smallest place in their lives. And he had no idea if he was strong enough to do it. But he had to try, because the alternative, a life without them, was unbearable. Kendrick started his car and drove home to his empty penthouse, his unsigned divorce papers still sitting on his desk at the office, his future uncertain, his past haunting him, and his present a wasteland of his own creation. Tomorrow he would figure out his next move. Tonight he would sit with the weight of what he'd lost and what he might never get back. The photo of Tayana and Walton stayed open on his phone. He looked at it one more time before setting the phone down. She was smiling in that picture. She was happy. And Kendrick realized with crushing certainty that her happiness had nothing to do with him anymore. Chapter 3. The Wall. The knock came at dawn, aggressive and persistent. Tayana had just finished feeding Walton, the baby drowsy and content in her arms, when the sound shattered the peace of her morning. She knew who it was before she looked through the peephole. Kendrick stood in her hallway, and he looked terrible. Unshaven, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes desperate. He'd found her somehow, tracked down her new apartment, broken through whatever barriers she'd tried to build. Tayana's jaw tightened. She shifted Walton to one arm and opened the door with the chain lock still in place, creating a gap barely wide enough to see through. "Leave or I call the police." Kendrick's face crumpled at the sound of her voice. "Tayana, please. I just need to talk to you." "You have nothing to say that I want to hear." "I want to see Walton. That's my son." His voice cracked on the words. "Please, just let me see him." Tayana's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Now you want to be a father? How convenient." Through the gap in the door she could see him flinch. Behind her, Walton made a small cooing sound, and Kendrick's eyes immediately tracked the noise, desperate for a glimpse of the baby. "I didn't know you were pregnant. If I'd known—" "You didn't give me a chance to tell you." Her voice was ice. "I walked into our home with the best news of my life, and you were drunk. You looked at me like I disgusted you. You told me to get out." "I was drunk. I didn't mean—" "You said I was worthless, Kendrick. You said you never wanted to see my face again." She stepped closer to the gap in the door, her eyes locking onto his. "So I made sure you didn't, and now you show up at my door months later wanting to play daddy. I want to know my son. You should have thought about that before you told his mother she was worthless." Kendrick's hand gripped the doorframe. "I was in a bad place. My father left my mother when I was a baby. It was the anniversary that night, and I don't care about your father." Tayana's voice cut through his explanation like a blade. "I don't care about your trauma. I don't care about your reasons. You destroyed me that night, and I had to rebuild myself while carrying your child." She adjusted Walton in her arms, and through the gap, Kendrick caught a glimpse of the baby's face. His breath hitched. "He has my eyes. He has your everything. And you'll never know him because you threw us away." Doors were opening up and down the hallway. Neighbors were starting to peer out, curious about the commotion. An elderly woman from across the hall stepped into view, her phone in hand. Everything okay, honey? She called to Tayana. It's fine, Mrs. Chen. Just an unwanted visitor who's about to leave. Kendrick looked around at the gathering audience and then back at Tayana. I'm not leaving until we talk. Then I'm calling the police. She moved to close the door, but his voice stopped her. I sat in my car outside your apartment last night. I watched your shadow in the window. I watched you holding him, feeding him, being the mother I robbed you of, sharing with me. His voice was raw. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But he's my son, Tayana. He's my blood. Please don't take that away from me. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in Tayana's eyes, but then it hardened again, her armor reassembling itself. You took it away from yourself. She started to close the door. Don't come back here, Kendrick. I mean it. Tayana! The door slammed shut. The chain lock clicked. The deadbolt turned. Kendrick stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door, his hands shaking. Behind the door, he could hear Walton making baby sounds, could hear Tayana's voice soft and gentle as she spoke to their son. You're okay, baby. Mama's got you. You're safe. The words gutted him. Safe. She had to tell their son he was safe because Kendrick's presence was a threat. Mrs. Chen was still standing in her doorway, watching him with narrow eyes. You better leave, young man. That girl doesn't need your trouble. Kendrick looked at the elderly woman, then back at Tayana's door. He raised his voice so Tayana could hear through the door. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for what I did. I know it's not enough, but I need you to know I don't care. Tayana's voice came through the door, muffled but clear. I don't care about your apologies. I don't care about your regret. You had a wife who loved you, and you destroyed her. You don't get to ask for mercy now. The hallway had gone silent. Even the neighbors who'd been watching had gone quiet, uncomfortable witnessing this private devastation play out in public. Kendrick pressed his palm against the door. Please, just tell me what I need to do. There's nothing you can do. Go back to your fiancée. Go back to your life. Forget about us the way you forgot about me when you told me to leave. I broke off the engagement. There is no fiancé. Silence from the other side of the door. Jennifer gave me back the ring. She said, his voice broke. She said I was in love with a ghost. She was right. I never stopped loving you, Tayana. I never stopped. The door stayed closed. You have a funny way of showing love. Tayana's voice finally came, quiet and lethal. Love doesn't tell someone they're worthless. Love doesn't choose alcohol over their partner. Love doesn't drive their pregnant wife into the night with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. I know. God, I know I was wrong. I was so wrong. Being wrong doesn't fix anything. It doesn't give me back the pregnancy you missed. It doesn't give me back the labor I went through alone. It doesn't erase the first time I held our son and realized his father wasn't there because he'd told me to disappear. Every word was a knife, precise and devastating. Kendrick's forehead rested against the door now, his eyes closed. What do I do? Tell me what to do. Leave. I can't. Then I'm calling the police. He heard movement inside, heard her walking away from the door. He pushed off and stared at the closed door, at the barrier between him and his family. Mrs. Chen's voice came from behind him. Son, you should go. Whatever you did, it's clear she's not ready to forgive you. Kendrick turned to look at the old woman. I told her she was worthless when she was coming to tell me she was pregnant. I told her to get out of my life. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't soften. Then you deserve exactly what you're getting. The truth of it hit him like a train. He did deserve this. He deserved the closed door, the rejection, the wall Tayana had built between them. He'd earned every bit of her coldness with his cruelty. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Rochelle. If you ever show up at her apartment again without permission, I will make sure you never see either of them. She's been through enough. Leave her alone." Kendrick looked at the message, then at Tayana's door, then back at the message. He typed back, "I just want to see my son, please." The response came immediately. "You don't get to make demands. She decides when and if you get to see him, not you, her." "Then how do I?" "You don't. You wait. And maybe, she'll let you back in. But if you push her, if you show up uninvited, if you harass her, you lose any chance you might have had." Kendrick stood in that hallway, his phone in his hand, the closed door in front of him, and understood the full weight of his powerlessness. Tayana held all the cards. She had their son. She had the truth. She had the right to shut him out forever, and there was nothing he could do about it. He left the building, got in his car, and drove away. But he didn't go home. He drove to his mother's house, the place he'd grown up after his father left, and knocked on her door. His mother answered, took one look at his face and pulled him inside. "What happened?" "I have a son." The words came out broken. "I have a son, and Tayana won't let me see him because I told her she was worthless and to get out of my life. And she was pregnant, Mama. She was coming to tell me she was pregnant, and I was drunk, and He couldn't finish. His mother's arms came around him, and for the second time in as many days, Kendrick broke. "Oh, baby." His mother's voice was soft but devastated. "Oh, Kendrick, what did you do?" "I became him." The realization hit like a wrecking ball. "I became Dad. I did to Tayana exactly what he did to you." His mother pulled back, her hands on his face, her eyes searching his. "Your father left because he was a coward. Are you a coward, Kendrick?" "I don't know." "Then you better figure it out. Because that woman, that strong, beautiful woman you married, she doesn't need a coward. She needs a man who will fight for his family. Not with words, not with excuses, with action." "She won't let me near her." "Then you find another way. You prove to her that you're not the man who told her to leave. You become the man who will never leave again." Kendrick stayed at his mother's house that night, sleeping in his childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, where glow-in-the-dark stars still clung from his teenage years. Somewhere across the city, Tayana was putting Walton to bed, singing to him, loving him, being everything their son needed, and Kendrick was here, exiled from his own family, knowing he deserved every second of this pain. But his mother's words echoed in his mind. "Prove you're not that man. Become the man who will never leave." He didn't know how yet. He didn't have a plan. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't giving up. Not on Walton, not on Tayana, not on the family he'd destroyed. Even if it took the rest of his life, he would earn his way back. Or he would die trying. Chapter 4. The Fortress. Jennifer Lawrence had never considered herself a brave person, but standing outside Tayana Hall's apartment building, she discovered a courage she didn't know she had. The engagement ring Kendrick had given her was in a box in her purse, already returned. The life she'd planned with him was over. But she needed to understand why. She needed to see the woman who'd held Kendrick's heart even when he'd pretended otherwise. She knocked on the apartment door softly, half hoping Tayana wouldn't answer. The door opened with the chain still on. Tayana's face appeared in the gap, her expression immediately hardening. "What are you doing here?" Jennifer's voice came out smaller than she intended. "I need to talk to you, please, just for a few minutes." "About what? About how you're engaged to my husband?" "I'm not anymore. I gave him back the ring." Tayana's eyes narrowed. "Good for you. That doesn't concern me." "Please, I'm not here to defend him. I'm not here to ask anything from you. I need to understand what I lost, what I never really had." For a long moment, Tayana stared at her through the gap. Then, surprisingly, the door closed, the chain rattled, and the door opened fully. Tayana stood there in jeans and a Georgetown University sweatshirt, Walton propped on her hip. The baby's eyes were alert, his tiny hand gripping his mother's shirt. Even now, even dressed casually in her own home, Tayana looked like royalty. She looked untouchable. "You have 5 minutes, then you leave." Jennifer stepped inside. The apartment was small, but immaculate. Baby things were organized neatly. A bouncer in the corner, bottles drying on the counter, a basket of tiny clothes folded with military precision. Photos lined a shelf above the couch. Tayana pregnant, glowing. Tayana in a hospital bed holding a newborn Walton, exhausted but smiling. Walton at various stages of his short life. Kendrick wasn't in any of them. "Sit." Tayana gestured to the couch but remained standing herself, Walton still on her hip. The power dynamic was clear. This was her domain, her space, her rules. Jennifer sat. "Thank you for letting me in." "I'm not letting you in. I'm allowing you to speak. There's a difference." "Right." Jennifer's hands twisted in her lap. "I didn't know about you. When Kendrick and I started dating, he said he was divorced. Past tense. Done. Finished. I didn't know the papers were never signed." "They're signed now. I signed them in his office. Whether he signs them is his problem. He told me what happened. That night. What he said to you." Tayana's expression didn't change. "And you're here to tell me he didn't mean it? That he was drunk? That I should forgive him?" "No." Jennifer looked up, meeting Tayana's eyes. "I'm here because I spent a year with a man who I thought loved me, and I just found out he was in love with someone else the entire time. I'm here because I need to see what I was competing against." "You weren't competing against me. You were competing against his guilt." The words landed with brutal accuracy. Jennifer felt something crack inside her chest. Tayana shifted Walton to her other hip. The baby made a soft cooing sound, and she automatically adjusted him, her movements practiced and fluid. "Kendrick proposed to you because he thought he could replace me. He thought if he found someone new, someone different, he could forget what he did. But you can't forget destroying someone you loved. It follows you." "He talked about you sometimes," Jennifer admitted. "He'd mention things, your favorite restaurant, a song you used to sing, the way you organized groceries. He'd catch himself and apologize, but I always knew. There was someone before me who mattered more. That person doesn't exist anymore." Tayana's voice was flat. "The woman Kendrick married died the night he told her she was worthless. I'm what came after." Jennifer looked at the photos again, at Tayana's journey documented in images. "You're not broken at all." "No, I'm not." "You're terrifying." Tayana's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I had to be. I was pregnant, alone, with no money and nowhere to go. Terror wasn't an option. Strength was the only choice." "How did you do it?" "I stopped loving him." The words were simple, factual. "The night he told me to leave, I made a choice. I could let his words destroy me, or I could prove him wrong. I chose to prove him wrong." Walton started to fuss, and Tayana automatically began bouncing slightly, a rhythm that seemed to come naturally. The baby settled immediately, his eyes starting to droop. "He's beautiful," Jennifer said softly. "He is." Tayana looked down at her son, and for the first time, her expression softened. "He's everything good in the world. Everything Kendrick could have had if he hadn't been so determined to destroy what we built." "Do you still love him?" The question hung in the air. Tayana's eyes lifted, meeting Jennifer's again, and the softness vanished. "That's not relevant." "It's completely relevant, because if you don't love him, then Kendrick is chasing something that's already dead. But if you do—" "If I do, it doesn't matter." Tayana's voice sharpened. "Love isn't enough. Love didn't stop him from choosing whiskey over me. Love didn't make him apologize the next morning. Love didn't bring him looking for me when I left. Love is a feeling, Jennifer. Action is what matters. He's trying. He's panicking. There's a difference. Tayana walked to the window, still holding Walton. He showed up here yesterday, begging to see his son. Where was that urgency when I was 6 months pregnant and couldn't afford prenatal vitamins? Where was that desperation when I went into labor alone? Where was he when I brought Walton home from the hospital by myself, terrified I wouldn't know what to do? Jennifer had no answer. He's not trying to be a father, Tayana continued. He's trying to absolve his guilt, and I'm not here to make him feel better about himself. What are you here for? Tayana looked down at Walton, who was now fully asleep against her shoulder. To raise my son, to build a life where he never questions his worth, to make sure he grows up knowing that his mother fought for him when his father walked away. Kendrick didn't walk away. He didn't know. He told me to leave. Tayana interrupted, her voice sharp. When you tell someone to get out of your life, you don't get to be surprised when they actually do it. Jennifer stood, understanding with perfect clarity that her time was up. I'm sorry he hurt you. I'm sorry he used me to try to forget you. I'm sorry for showing up here. Don't apologize to me. You didn't do anything wrong. Tayana's expression was neutral again, controlled. You fell in love with a man who wasn't available. That's not your fault. It's his. At the door, Jennifer turned back. For what it's worth, I think he really does love you. I think he always has. Love without respect is worthless. Tayana opened the door, a clear dismissal. And he lost my respect the night he called me worthless. Jennifer stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind her with quiet finality. She stood there for a moment, processing everything. Tayana wasn't broken. She wasn't weak. She wasn't waiting for Kendrick to save her or complete her or make her whole. She was already whole, already strong, already built a life that didn't need him in it. And that, Jennifer realized, was why Kendrick would never stop loving her. Tayana didn't need him. And Kendrick had spent his entire relationship with Jennifer trying to find someone who did. Inside the apartment, Tayana laid Walton down in his crib and stood watching him sleep. Her friend Rochelle had been texting, asking how she was holding up, offering to come over. Tayana texted back, Jennifer came by. What? Are you okay? I'm fine. She's not the enemy. She's just another casualty. And Kendrick? Tayana stared at her phone for a long time before responding. He's nothing. But the lie tasted bitter even as she typed it. The truth was more complicated. The truth was that she saw Kendrick every time she looked at Walton. The truth was that she remembered what it felt like to love him, to trust him, to believe in forever with him. The truth was that his words still echoed in her mind late at night when she was alone. You're worthless. Get out. The truth was that loving him and hating him existed simultaneously in her heart, and she didn't know how to reconcile those feelings. But she'd learned something in the months since she'd left. She didn't need to reconcile them. She could hold both truths at once. She could love the man he'd been and hate the man he'd become. She could remember their past and refuse to let it dictate her future. She could survive without him. She had survived without him. And that was power Kendrick could never take away. Rochelle's next text came through. Do you think you'll ever let him see Walton? Tayana looked at her sleeping son, at the tiny life she'd built from nothing, at the miracle that had come from devastation. She typed, maybe, someday, if he proves he's worthy, but that day isn't today. What would make him worthy? Tayana didn't answer. She didn't know. She wasn't sure anything could erase the damage he'd done. But she also knew that Walton deserved a father, not the drunk man who'd told her to leave, not the panicked man who'd showed up begging at her door. A real father, a present father, a father who chose his son every single day. She didn't know if Kendrick could become that man, But she knew she wouldn't give him the chance to prove it until she was absolutely certain he wouldn't hurt Walton the way he'd hurt her. Her phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "This is Kendrick. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But I'm begging you, please let me see him. Once, just once, let me hold my son." Tayana stared at the message. Her thumb hovered over the delete button, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the memory of Kendrick before that night, the man who'd made her laugh until her stomach hurt, who'd held her when she cried, who'd promised her forever. Maybe it was the knowledge that Walton would grow up and ask about his father, and she'd have to explain why he wasn't there. Maybe it was just exhaustion, bone-deep weariness of carrying all this anger alone. She typed, "No." But before she sent it, she deleted it. She typed it again, deleted it again. Finally, she settled on, "I'll think about it." She hit send before she could change her mind. His response came within seconds. "Thank you, thank you. I'll wait, however long it takes." Tayana put her phone face down on the counter and walked away from it. She'd think about it. That's what she'd said. But thinking about it didn't mean saying yes. It didn't mean forgiving him. It didn't mean anything except that she was willing to consider, maybe possibly someday, allowing Kendrick White back into the orbit of her life. But he would be on probation, forever. And if he ever hurt Walton the way he'd hurt her, she would make sure he regretted it for the rest of his life. Tayana Hall was done being the woman who got destroyed. She was the woman who survived, the woman who built, the woman who protected her son above all else. And Kendrick would have to accept that, or he would have nothing. Those were the only terms she was offering. Take them or leave them. She already knew she'd be fine either way. Chapter 5. The Crack, revised. Tayana woke to Walton's crying at 2 in the morning. Not his usual fussy cry, but something sharper, more distressed. She was at his crib in seconds, lifting him out, and her heart stopped when she felt the heat radiating from his tiny body. "Oh God, baby, you're burning up." She grabbed her thermometer with shaking hands. The reading made her stomach drop. This wasn't normal baby warmth. This was dangerous. Walton whimpered against her chest, his little face flushed, his body limp in a way that terrified her. She'd been monitoring him all evening after noticing he felt warm, but this was different. She threw on clothes, grabbed her bag, wrapped Walton in a blanket, and ran. The emergency room was bright and cold. A nurse took one look at Walton's age and his fever and rushed them back immediately. "How old is he?" "A few months." Tayana's voice was shaking. "His fever spiked. I've been watching it all day, but it just jumped and You did the right thing bringing him in." They put Walton on monitors, took blood, asked questions Tayana answered through a fog of terror. The baby was crying now, scared by the unfamiliar place, the needles, the bright lights. "Shh, baby, Mama's here, I'm right here." The doctor came in, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes. "We're going to keep him for observation. Fevers this high in infants require monitoring. Most likely it's viral, but we need to rule out serious infection." "Is he going to be okay?" "I think so, yes. But we have to be careful with babies this young." They moved them to a pediatric observation area, Walton in a hospital crib, IV in his tiny arm, Tayana in a plastic chair beside him. She held his hand through the crib bars and tried not to fall apart. Her phone buzzed. "Rochelle, how's the little man feeling? You said he was warm earlier." Tayana's fingers trembled as she typed back, "Hospital, high fever. They're keeping him for observation." "What? Which hospital? I'm coming." "No, you're 3 hours away visiting your sister. We're okay. They say it's probably viral." "Are you alone?" Tayana looked around the observation room. Other parents sat with their sick children, but she recognized none of them. Her mother was states away. She had friends, but no one close enough to call at this hour. "I'm fine," just scared. Text me every hour. I mean it. Tayana put her phone down and watched her son sleep fitfully, the monitors tracking every breath, every heartbeat. She'd never felt more alone in her life. Hours crawled by. Nurses came and went. Walton's fever started responding to medication, slowly dropping. But he was still so small, so vulnerable, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed. Around 5 in the morning, Tayana put her head in her hands and let herself cry quietly. Just for a moment. Just enough to release the pressure building in her chest. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her. "Tayana?" She spun around. Kendrick stood in the doorway of the observation room, his hair disheveled, his eyes wild with panic. "What are you doing here? Is he okay? Where is he?" Kendrick's eyes found the crib, found Walton with the IV, and his face went white. "Oh my God. How did you even know we were here? I drove by your apartment. I couldn't sleep and I know it sounds crazy, but I sometimes drive by just to see if your lights are on, just to know you're both okay." He looked ashamed, admitting it. "Your car wasn't there. It's 5 in the morning. I got scared. I called every hospital in the area until I found you." Tayana wanted to be angry, wanted to tell him he was stalking her, that this was inappropriate, that he had no right to be here. But she was so tired, so scared, so alone. "High fever," she heard herself say. "They're monitoring him for infection." Kendrick moved toward the crib like he was in a trance. "Can I? Don't touch anything." He stopped, his hands hovering, wanting to reach for his son but respecting her boundary. "What did the doctors say?" "Probably viral. They're running tests." Her voice cracked. "He's so little, Kendrick. He's so little, and he's hooked up to all these machines, and I don't know what to do." "You're doing everything right. You got him here. You're with him." "I've been here for hours by myself." The words hung between them, an accusation and a truth. She'd done everything alone. The pregnancy, the birth, the sleepless nights, and now this. Kendrick's jaw tightened. "I'm here now. You don't get to be here. This isn't your place. He's my son." "Now he's your son?" Where was that concern when I was pregnant and terrified? Where was it when he was born and I had no one to call? "I didn't know, because you told me to get out." Her voice rose, and a nurse looked over with concern. Tayana lowered her voice, aware they were in a hospital, aware other sick children were sleeping nearby. "You need to leave. Tayana, please." "I said leave." But even as she said it, Walton stirred in the crib and made a small, distressed sound. Both of them immediately looked at the baby. The monitor showed his fever continuing to drop, his vitals stabilizing. Kendrick pulled a chair over, not next to Tayana, but close enough to see Walton clearly. He sat down without asking permission. "Call security if you want, but I'm not leaving while he's here, while he's sick." Tayana was too exhausted to fight, too scared to push him away when having another adult present, even him, made her feel slightly less alone. So she said nothing, and Kendrick took that as permission. They sat in silence. Minutes became an hour. The sun started rising outside the hospital windows, painting the observation room in shades of pink and gold. A nurse came to check Walton's vitals, smiled at them both. "Mum and Dad both here. That's good. He's doing much better. Fever's coming down nicely." Tayana didn't correct her about the mom and dad comment. Didn't have the energy. When the nurse left, Kendrick spoke quietly. "Thank you for not making me leave. I didn't do it for you." "I know." More silence. Walton's breathing was evening out, his color returning to normal. The worst was passing. "I was terrified," Tayana admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "When his fever spiked, when I realized something was really wrong, I've never been that scared in my life. You handled it perfectly. You got him here. You're an incredible mother. I do it alone." "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you've had to do everything alone." Tayana looked at him for the first time since he'd arrived. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, his clothes wrinkled like he'd been wearing them for days. "Why were you driving by my apartment at 5 in the morning?" He hesitated. "I told you, I couldn't sleep. I worry about you both. I know it's probably creepy, but I need to know you're safe." "That's not healthy." "I know. I'll stop. But tonight, I'm glad I drove by. I'm glad I found you. Don't make this into something it's not. You being here doesn't change anything between us. I know that too." The doctor returned around 7, reviewed the numbers, and smiled. "He's responding beautifully. Fever's almost normal. We'll keep him another few hours for observation, but he should be fine to go home." Relief crashed over Tayana so hard she nearly sobbed. "Thank you. Thank God." After the doctor left, Tayana put her head back against the wall and closed her eyes. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, had been running on pure adrenaline and terror. "You should rest," Kendrick said. "Even just 20 minutes. I'll watch him." "No. Tayana, you're exhausted. You can barely keep your eyes open." "I'm fine. You're not fine. And if you collapse, you can't take care of him." His voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not touching anything. I'm just watching. You can sleep right there, 3 feet away. If anything changes, I'll wake you immediately." Every instinct told her to refuse, to maintain control, to not show weakness. But her body was betraying her. She was so tired she was dizzy. 20 minutes, she finally said. "That's it. 20 minutes. She closed her eyes. Sleep dragged her under within seconds. Kendrick watched Tayana sleep, her head at an uncomfortable angle, her hand still reaching toward the crib, even unconscious. Then he looked at Walton, his son, this tiny person he barely knew. The baby was sleeping now too, his fever-flushed face returning to its normal, beautiful brown. His little chest rose and fell steadily. The monitors beeped their reassuring rhythm. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," Kendrick whispered. "I'm sorry your mom had to do this alone. I'm sorry I'm only here now because I got lucky and drove by at the right time." Walton slept on, peaceful now, safe. "I won't miss anything else, I swear. Whatever it takes, however long she makes me wait, I'll prove I'm worthy of being your father." 20 minutes became 40, then an hour. Tayana didn't wake, her body taking the rest it desperately needed. Kendrick stayed perfectly still, watching over both of them. When Tayana finally stirred, dawn had broken fully outside. She jerked awake, immediately checking the crib. "He's fine," Kendrick said quickly, "sleeping peacefully. Fever's almost gone. Nothing changed." Tayana checked the monitors herself, checked Walton, satisfied herself everything was okay. Then she looked at Kendrick, and something in her expression shifted. Just slightly, just enough. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't have to thank me." "I do. You stayed. You could have made this harder. You didn't." They sat there as the hospital came alive around them, and Tayana made a decision. "You can see him. Supervised visits, Sundays. Rochelle has to be there. You follow every rule I set, clear?" Kendrick's breath caught. "Yes. God, yes. Whatever you want." "This isn't for you," Tayana said, her voice hardening again. "This is for him. He deserves to know his father, even if his father doesn't deserve to know him." "I understand." "Do you? Because if you let him down the way you let me down, I will make sure you never see him again." "I won't, I swear." The nurse came to discharge them. Walton was cleared to go home. Tayana gathered her things, and Kendrick stood. "Can I walk you to your car?" "No, Sunday. Rochelle will text you the time and address. Don't be late. Don't be early." "I won't." She lifted Walton from the crib, careful of his IV site, and held him against her chest. The baby stirred and settled into her warmth immediately. Kendrick watched them leave, watched Tayana carry their son away, and felt something he hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Small, fragile, easily destroyed. But there, Tayana had opened the door, just a crack, just enough for him to prove himself. He wouldn't waste it. He couldn't afford to. As he left the hospital and walked into the morning light, one thought echoed in his mind. She let me stay. When she was scared and alone, she let me stay. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was something. And right now, something was everything. Chapter 6. Supervised Second Sunday arrived with the weight of judgment. Kendrick stood outside the address Rochelle had sent. A neat townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, far from the luxury condo he and Tayana had shared when they were married. This was where she'd built her new life, where she was raising their son, where he was a visitor at best and an intruder at worst. He knocked precisely at the agreed time. Not early, not late. Rochelle answered. She didn't smile, didn't invite him in warmly, just stepped aside and said, "Shoes off, wash your hands, living room." Kendrick did as he was told, feeling like a teenager being supervised by a strict parent. He followed Rochelle into a living room where Tayana sat on the couch, Walton in her arms. She didn't stand when he entered, didn't acknowledge his presence beyond a slight nod. "Sit." She gestured to a chair across the room. Not close, not comfortable, a deliberate distance. Kendrick sat. For a moment, no one spoke. Walton made a small cooing sound, his eyes wandering around the room before landing on the stranger in the chair. The baby's expression was curious but wary, the way babies are with unfamiliar people. "He just ate," Tayana said. "He's clean. He's been napping well. If he cries, I take him back. If he seems uncomfortable, I take him back. Clear?" "Clear. You have 1 hour. Rochelle stays the entire time. You don't take photos. You don't post anything online. You don't tell your friends or family about these visits until I say you can. This is private." "I understand." Tayana stood, and for the first time, she walked toward him. Walton rested against her shoulder, his tiny hand gripping her shirt. She stopped a few feet away. "You can hold him." Kendrick's hands started shaking before he even stood up. He'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, he felt paralyzed by the fear of doing something wrong. "Support his head," Tayana instructed, her voice clinical. "He can't hold it up fully on his own yet. One hand behind his neck, one under his bottom." Kendrick positioned his hands the way she showed him, and then, carefully, so carefully, Tayana placed Walton in his arms. The weight of his son hit him like a physical force. Walton was so small, so warm, so alive. His little body curved instinctively, and his dark eyes stared up at Kendrick's face with innocent curiosity. "Hi," Kendrick whispered. His voice cracked. "Hi, buddy, I'm your—" He couldn't finish. His throat closed up completely. Walton made a small sound, his face scrunching up, and then he started to cry. Not a full wail, but a distressed whimper that grew louder. Tayana immediately stepped forward. "Give him back!" "No, wait, please, Kendrick, give him back." Kendrick handed Walton back, his arms feeling empty the moment his son left them. Tayana cradled the baby against her chest, murmuring soft sounds, and Walton settled immediately. "He doesn't know you," she said flatly. "You're a stranger to him." The words cut deeper than any blade. Kendrick sat back down, his head in his hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me. You can't apologize your way through this." Rochelle, who'd been standing in the corner silently, spoke up. "Maybe that's enough for today." "No." Tayana looked at Kendrick, her expression unreadable. "Stand up." He stood. "Try again, but this time don't grab at him like you're desperate. Hold him like he matters." Kendrick approached again, and this time, when Tayana transferred Walton to his arms, he focused on making his body calm, his grip gentle, his presence steady. Walton didn't cry immediately. He looked up at Kendrick, his little face serious, processing this new person. "That's it," Tayana said quietly. "Just hold him. Don't try to do anything. Just be there." So Kendrick stood there, holding his son, feeling the rise and fall of tiny breaths, counting the beats of a heart so small and perfect it made his own chest ache. Minutes passed. Walton's eyes started to droop, his body relaxed incrementally, his initial wariness fading into the sleepy contentment of a well-fed baby. And then, as Kendrick watched in amazement, his son fell asleep in his arms. Tears streamed down Kendrick's face silently. He didn't move, didn't breathe wrong, didn't do anything that might disturb this perfect moment. Tayana watched from the couch, her expression stone. But Rochelle, standing in the corner, saw what Tayana maybe didn't, or wouldn't acknowledge. Kendrick looked at Walton the way every father should look at their child, like he was holding the entire world, like nothing else mattered. "Time's up," Tayana said after exactly 1 hour. Kendrick carefully, reluctantly handed Walton back. The baby stirred slightly but remained asleep as Tayana took him. "Next Sunday, same time," she said. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me, just show up." Rochelle walked him to the door. As he was leaving, she said quietly, "She's protecting herself, don't push her." "I won't, I promise." "Good. Because that woman in there raised a baby alone while her body was still recovering from childbirth. She didn't have help. She didn't have support. She did it all by herself because you told her she was worthless. So if you want any part of their lives, you better prove you're worth something." The door closed. Kendrick drove home in a daze. He'd held his son. For an hour, he'd been Walton's father. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough to make up for what he'd missed. But it was a start. The following Sunday, he arrived exactly on time again. Same routine, same rules, same careful distance. This time, when he held Walton, the baby didn't cry. He just looked at Kendrick with those serious dark eyes, trying to figure out who this person was. "Hey, buddy," Kendrick whispered. "It's me again." Walton made a small sound, not crying, just vocalizing, the way babies do when they're content. Tayana watched from her position on the couch. Her face gave nothing away. But she didn't take Walton back early. She let the full hour pass. This became the pattern. Every Sunday, exactly on time, Kendrick would arrive. Every Sunday, Tayana would hand him their son with the same clinical instructions. Every Sunday, Rochelle would stand guard in the corner. And every Sunday, Kendrick fell more in love with the tiny person he'd never known existed. On the fourth visit, Walton smiled at him. A real smile, not gas or a reflex, but a genuine expression of infant joy. Kendrick nearly sobbed. He smiled. "Did you see that? He smiled at me." Tayana's voice was cold. "Babies smile at everyone. It doesn't mean anything." But Rochelle caught Tayana's face in that moment, saw the flicker of something, fear maybe, or recognition, that Kendrick was becoming real to Walton, that their son was bonding with his father. On the sixth visit, Kendrick made a mistake. He showed up 5 minutes early, too eager, too desperate. Tayana answered the door, but didn't let him in. "You're early. Just by a few minutes. Rules are rules. Come back at the right time." She closed the door. Kendrick stood in the hallway for 5 minutes, watching the seconds tick by on his phone, before knocking again at exactly the agreed time. Tayana answered. "Next time you're early, you don't get in at all. Clear? Crystal." Inside, after she'd handed Walton over, Rochelle whispered to Tayana, "You're being pretty harsh." "Good. He needs to understand boundaries." "He does understand. Look at him." Tayana looked. Kendrick was sitting in the chair, Walton asleep on his chest, and he was staring at their son with such naked adoration it was almost painful to witness. "That doesn't erase what he did," Tayana said quietly. "No, but it means he's trying. Trying isn't enough." But even as she said it, Tayana knew something was shifting. Walton was getting used to Kendrick. Their son reached for him now when Kendrick arrived, made happy sounds when he heard Kendrick's voice, and Tayana was terrified. Because bonding meant attachment. Attachment meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant the possibility of pain. And she wouldn't let Kendrick hurt Walton the way he'd hurt her. After Kendrick left that Sunday, she stood in her living room holding Walton, looking at the chair where Kendrick had sat. Rochelle put a hand on her shoulder. "You okay? He's getting too comfortable." "Isn't that the point? What if he leaves again? What if he decides this is too hard and walks away? Then you'll handle it." "But Tayana, look at him. Really look. That man is not walking away." "You don't know that." "I do. Because I've seen men who don't care about their kids. I've seen deadbeat dads who skip visits and forget birthdays. That's not Kendrick. He's here every Sunday, exactly on time, following every rule you set, looking at Walton like he's the second coming of Christ." Tayana said nothing. "You're not protecting Walton by keeping Kendrick at arm's length forever," Rochelle continued gently. "You're protecting yourself, and that's okay. You have every right to protect yourself, but don't confuse the two." After Rochelle left, Tayana sat alone with Walton, watching her son sleep, and whispered, "Your daddy hurt me so badly, baby. I don't know how to trust him again. I don't know if I even want to." Walton slept on, innocent and oblivious to his mother's turmoil, and Tayana made a decision. She would keep the supervised visits. She would allow Kendrick to build a relationship with Walton, but she would never, ever give him the power to hurt her again. Her heart was permanently off limits, even if part of her still remembered what it was like to love him. Chapter 7. The lesson revised. The supervised visits had become routine. Every Sunday, exactly on time, Kendrick arrived. Every Sunday, Tayana handed him Walton with clinical precision. Every Sunday, Rochelle stood guard. But this Sunday felt different. Kendrick arrived as always, but when Tayana opened the door, she didn't step aside immediately. She stood in the doorway, studying his face. "Come in, sit." Something in her tone made Kendrick nervous. He followed her into the living room, where Walton was playing with soft blocks on the floor. Rochelle was there, as always, but she looked tense. "We need to talk," Tayana said, "before you see him today." "Okay." Tayana remained standing while Kendrick sat. Power dynamic established clearly. "Tell me about your father." Kendrick's face went pale. "What?" "Your father. The one who abandoned you. Tell me about him." "Why?" "Because I'm asking. And if you want to keep these visits, you answer my questions." Kendrick looked at Walton, then back at Tayana. "What do you want to know?" "When did he leave?" "I was a baby, just a few months old." "Why did he leave?" "He got drunk on my mother's birthday, told her she'd ruined his life, told her I'd ruined his life, and he walked out. We never saw him again." Tayana's expression didn't change. "And the night you told me to leave, what date was that?" Kendrick's hands gripped his knees. "How did you know?" "Answer the question." "It was the anniversary, the same day. 28 years exactly." His voice dropped. "I didn't realize it consciously at the time. But yeah, same day my father left my mother. So you became him." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. "Yes," Kendrick said quietly. "I became exactly what I was terrified of becoming." Tayana crossed her arms. "And you think that explains it? You think knowing you have daddy issues makes what you did to me acceptable?" "No! God, no! I'm not making excuses." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm trying to help you understand why." "I don't care why." Her voice cut through his explanation like glass. You had a traumatic childhood. That's terrible. I'm sorry that happened to you, but Kendrick, it doesn't excuse what you did to me. I know that. Do you? Because it sounds like you're trying to get sympathy. Like if I just understand your pain, I'll forgive yours. That's not what I'm doing. Then what are you doing? Standing here telling me about your absent father like it's supposed to make me feel better about you becoming him? Kendrick stood, his frustration finally breaking through. I'm trying to be honest with you. You asked about my father, and I told you the truth. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just trying to show you that I understand what I did wrong. You pushed me away because your father abandoned you? That makes no sense. I was terrified of being left, so I left first. I pushed you away before you could walk away from me. It's textbook psychology, and it's pathetic, and it's exactly what happened. Tayana stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. Your father was a coward who ran from responsibility, and you're a coward who drove responsibility away. The only difference is the method. You're right. And now you want me to what? Feel sorry for you? Understand you? Give you a pass because you had a rough childhood? No. I want you to know that I see it now. I see what I did and why I did it. Not because it excuses anything, but because if I don't understand it, I'll do it again. And I won't hurt Walton the way my father hurt me. Walton made a sound from the floor, responding to the raised voices. Both parents immediately looked at the baby. Tayana took a breath, forcing herself calm. Your trauma isn't an excuse for mine. I know. Your father abandoned you, so you decided to abandon your own child? You're worse than him, Kendrick. At least he didn't know what he was missing. You knew. You had a wife who loved you. You had a chance at a family, and you destroyed it on purpose. Each word landed like a physical blow. Kendrick had no defense because she was absolutely right. I loved you, Tayana continued, her voice dropping but losing none of its power. I loved you so much it scared me sometimes, and you took that love and told me I was worthless. I was wrong. Stop apologizing. Stop explaining. I don't want your reasons. I want you to understand something. She moved closer, her presence overwhelming, even though she was physically smaller. Understanding why you hurt me doesn't mean I'm ready to forgive you. It doesn't mean we're making progress. It means I know the source of your damage. That's all. What do you want from me? I want you to prove you're not him. Not with words, with action, with showing up, with being the father Walton deserves even when it's hard, even when I'm difficult, even when every instinct you have wants to run. I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. Her composure cracked slightly. I tried to save our marriage. I tried to reach you. I tried to tell you I was pregnant. Trying doesn't mean anything if you fail anyway. Walton was fully alert now, watching his parents with wide eyes. He crawled toward Kendrick, reaching up with tiny hands. Dada? The single syllable stopped both adults cold. Did he just... Kendrick's voice caught. Don't, Tayana warned. Don't act like that changes anything. But Walton was insistent, pulling himself up on Kendrick's leg, looking up at his father with complete trust. Kendrick looked at Tayana, silently asking permission. She gave a tight nod. He lifted Walton carefully, and the baby immediately settled against his chest, content. He wants you, Tayana said flatly. Don't make him regret it. I won't. You say that now. What about when he's 2 and throwing tantrums? When he's sick at 3 in the morning? When he needs you and it's inconvenient? I'll be there. For how long? Until it gets too hard. Until your fear kicks in and you push him away like you pushed me. No, I'm not running. I'm not leaving. Even when you're angry, especially when you're angry. I'm here. Forever is a long time, Kendrick. You couldn't handle 3 years of marriage. The truth of it hung between them. Tayana watched Kendrick hold their son, watched Walton grip his father's shirt with tiny fists, and felt her control slipping. Walton loved him. Her son had bonded with the man who'd destroyed her. He's getting too comfortable with you, she said quietly. Isn't that the point? What if you leave? What if you decide this is too hard and you walk away? He'll be devastated. I'm not walking away. You don't know that. Kendrick looked at her directly. My father left because he was weak. I pushed you away because I was terrified. But I'm not leaving Walton. Not ever. You want me to prove I'm different from my father? I'll prove it. Every single day, for the rest of my life. Words, Tayana said. Just words. Then watch my actions. That's all I'm asking. Don't believe what I say. Believe what I do. Rochelle, who'd been silent in the corner, finally spoke. Tayana, can I talk to you? Kitchen. Tayana followed Rochelle into the kitchen, leaving Kendrick in the living room with Walton. He's trying, Rochelle said quietly. So? So maybe you need to let him actually prove himself instead of assuming he'll fail. I'm protecting Walton. Are you? Or are you protecting yourself? The question hung there. Tayana had no answer. When they returned to the living room, Walton had fallen asleep in Kendrick's arms. The sight of it, her baby peaceful against his father's chest, made something twist painfully in Tayana's heart. Time's up, she said, even though it wasn't. Kendrick handed Walton back without argument. The baby stirred, but didn't wake. At the door, Kendrick turned. I know you don't believe me. I know you think I'm going to fail, but Tayana, I see what I did. I see how I became my father, and I'm not being him anymore. Not to you, not to Walton, never again. Then prove it. I will. Every Sunday, every day you let me, I'll prove it. After he left, Tayana sat with Walton and stared at nothing. Rochelle sat beside her. You told him about his father. Why? I needed to understand why he did it. And now I do. He was scared of being abandoned, so he abandoned first. It's textbook damaged man behavior. Does understanding change anything? No. But even as Tayana said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Understanding made Kendrick human again, made him a broken man instead of a monster, and somehow that was harder to hate. He's not going to leave Walton, Rochelle said. I've watched him for weeks now. That man is committed. People say they're committed all the time, then they leave when it gets hard. He cancelled a multi-million-dollar deal to keep a Sunday visit. That's not the action of someone who's going to bail. Tayana looked down at Walton, sleeping peacefully in her arms. His first word was Dada, not Mama, Dada, for the man who wasn't there. Because you let him be there now. That's your choice, Tayana. You opened that door. I'm terrified. Of what? Of Walton loving him. Of me loving him. Of letting him back in just to have him destroy us again. Those are valid fears. So what do? You let him prove himself, day by day, visit by visit, and if he fails, which I don't think he will, you'll handle it. But you can't punish him forever for something he did when he was at his worst. He told me I was worthless. And he was wrong, dead wrong, but he's spending every day trying to prove he knows that now. After Rochelle left, Tayana sat alone with Walton and whispered, Your daddy's trying, baby. He's really trying. I just don't know if I'm strong enough to give him the chance to prove it. But even as she said it, she knew the door was opening, slowly, painfully, but opening nonetheless, because Walton deserved a father, and Kendrick was showing up every single time. The question wasn't whether he was trying. The question was whether Tayana was brave enough to believe he'd changed, and she didn't have an answer yet. Chapter 8. The Sacrifice Revised. The text came on Friday morning. Singapore deal closing Monday. Need to be there. Will miss Sunday visit. I'm sorry. Tayana stared at the message. There it was. The excuse. The first crack. The beginning of backing out. She didn't respond. Saturday evening, she was feeding Walton when her doorbell rang. Unexpected. Through the peephole, Kendrick stood there in a suit, looking exhausted. She opened the door with the chain on. "What are you doing here?" "Can I come in? Just for a minute?" "You have a visit scheduled tomorrow, not today." "I know, but I needed to tell you something in person." Tayana studied his face, then undid the chain. He stepped inside and she immediately noticed his tie loosened, his eyes red, his entire body language screaming exhaustion. "What?" "I'm not going to Singapore." "I got your text. You said you had a deal." "I did. I was supposed to fly out this morning. Massive contract. Months of work. Millions of dollars." He ran his hand over his face. "I cancelled it." Tayana blinked. "You what?" "I cancelled the trip. Turned down the deal. I'm not going." "Why?" "Because it's Sunday tomorrow, and I promised I'd be here every Sunday." He looked at her directly. "I spent our entire marriage choosing work over you, choosing business trips over our anniversary. I'm not doing that anymore." "You cancelled a multi-million-dollar deal to show up for a 1-hour visit?" "Yes." "That's insane." "No. What's insane is thinking my career was more important than my family." He stepped closer, but not too close. "I know you don't trust me. I know you think I'll eventually choose work over Walton. So I'm showing you now, nothing is more important than being his father. You're going to lose business over this." "Probably. I don't care." "Kendrick, let me finish." His voice was firm. "For 3 years I came home late, missed dinners, forgot plans, chose my company over our marriage. You waited for me, until you couldn't anymore." Tayana said nothing, her grip on Walton tightening. "I can't give you back those years, but I can show you I learned, that when I make a promise now I keep it. So I'm keeping this one. Sunday, 2 p.m. I'll be here." He turned to leave. "Wait." Tayana's voice stopped him. "You really cancelled? You're really not going?" "I'm really not going. Your partners must be furious." "They are. They'll get over it or they won't. Either way, it doesn't matter more than this." He left before she could respond. Tayana stood in her entryway, Walton on her hip, staring at the closed door. Rochelle called an hour later. "Did Kendrick really turn down the Singapore deal?" "How did you know?" "Andre called me. He said Kendrick's partners are losing their minds, months of work, huge expansion opportunity, and Kendrick walked away. He said he wanted to keep his promise." "For a 1-hour visit?" "Yes." Rochelle was quiet. "Tayana, men don't do that. They don't sacrifice careers for supervised visits. That's not manipulation. That's change." "Maybe. Or maybe you're scared to believe he's actually different." Sunday arrived. Kendrick showed up at exactly 2 p.m. He looked like he hadn't slept, but he was there, on time. Tayana opened the door. "You really did it. I told you I would. Your company will survive or it won't. I have bigger priorities." She let him in. Rochelle was there, but she looked at Kendrick differently now, with something approaching respect. When Tayana handed Walton to Kendrick, the baby immediately brightened, making happy sounds. The bond was undeniable. "Sit," Tayana said. Kendrick sat with Walton. Then Tayana did something unprecedented. She sat next to him, not across the room, next to him. "You gave up a lot," she said quietly. "I gave up a deal. That's nothing. It was everything to you once. Work was all I had. Now I have him." He looked at Walton. "Nothing is worth missing this." They sat in silence. Walton babbled happily, playing with Kendrick's fingers. "When we were married," Tayana said, not looking at him, "I used to wait for you. You'd text saying you'd be home by 7, then 8, then 9. And I'd sit there wondering if I even mattered. You did. You always did. But not enough to come home, not enough to put me first." "No, not then." He looked at her. "But I'm different now. I lost you once because of that mistake. I won't lose Walton the same way. One sacrifice doesn't buy forgiveness. I'm not trying to buy anything. I'm showing you I meant what I said, that I'm here. Not just when it's convenient, always. Walton grabbed Kendrick's finger and pulled it to his mouth, gumming it. Kendrick laughed, genuine and full of joy. Tayana felt her throat tighten. She'd heard him laugh like that once, when they were happy, when she believed forever meant something. He's teething, she said, forcing practicality. He's fussy at night. The cold rings help. Is there anything I can bring? Anything you need? We're fine. Tayana. He looked at her seriously. I know you don't need me. You've proven that. But can I help? Not because you need it, because I want to be involved. She wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain distance. But watching him with Walton, knowing he'd sacrificed his career to keep a promise, something shifted. He needs diapers, size 3, and sweet potato baby food, not carrots. It was small, a tiny opening, but Kendrick recognized it for what it was, progress. I'll bring them next week. The hour passed differently. Tayana didn't watch with suspicion. She sat near him, close enough to hear Walton's happy sounds, close enough to see Kendrick transform when their son smiled at him, close enough to remember what being a family felt like. When the hour ended, Kendrick handed Walton back. Before he left, Tayana spoke. Thank you for keeping your promise, for choosing him over the deal. I'll always choose him. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not. Every Sunday, 2 p.m. For as long as you'll let me, I'll be here. After he left, Rochelle emerged from her corner. You sat next to him. I know. That's new. He gave up a huge deal to show up for an hour. That's new too. Are you softening? No. But the word came out uncertain. I'm just recognizing that he's trying. Tayana, don't tell me to forgive him. One cancelled trip doesn't erase 3 years of neglect. I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say you're allowed to recognize when someone is genuinely trying to make amends. Tayana looked at Walton, who was starting to fall asleep. I don't know how to trust him again. Maybe you don't have to trust him. Maybe you just let him prove himself, one Sunday at a time. That night, alone with Walton asleep, Tayana pulled out old photos. Her and Kendrick on their wedding day, laughing at dinner, holding each other on vacation. They'd been happy once, before his work consumed him, before he pushed her away, before everything broke. Could they be that again? Did she want that? She didn't have answers. But she knew one thing. Kendrick showing up today, sacrificing his business for 1 hour with their son, that meant something. Whether it meant enough, she didn't know yet. But it was more than before. And maybe that was progress. Chapter 9. The Precipice. Final time moved differently now. Each Sunday felt like both an eternity and an instant. Walton was growing, his attachment to Kendrick undeniable, and that terrified Tayana. The request came on a Sunday evening after Kendrick's visit. Would you consider couples therapy? Tayana stared at him. We're divorced. The papers are signed on your end, not mine. So sign them. I don't want to. His voice was steady. I don't want to end our marriage. I want to fight for it. There's nothing left to fight for. Isn't there? Because I see the way you look at me when I'm holding Walton. You're seeing what you want to see. Maybe. Or maybe you're scared to admit you still feel something. Tayana's jaw tightened. Feelings don't fix what's broken. No, but therapy might help us co-parent without hostility. Walton's getting old enough to sense it. Don't use our son to manipulate me. I'm being practical. How is this anger good for him? She wanted to refuse, but he had a point. Her anger was exhausting, and Walton noticed. I'll think about it. That night, Tayana couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, and Kendrick's words echoed. I see you remembering. She was remembering. That was the problem. Their second date. He'd taken her to a tiny Ethiopian restaurant she'd mentioned once in passing. He'd remembered that detail from weeks earlier. They'd eaten with their hands, laughing, and he'd looked at her like she was the most fascinating person alive. The morning he'd proposed, not some grand display, just the two of them making breakfast. He'd said, "I want to wake up like this every day for the rest of my life. Marry me." Simple, perfect, their wedding night. After everything, lying in bed, his arms around her. He'd whispered, "I can't believe you're mine. I'm never letting you go." But he had let her go. He'd told her to get out. Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else. Tayana whispered into the darkness, "I hate that I still remember who you were. I hate that I still love that man." Days passed. Then Kendrick's mother called. "Tayana, can I come see you and my grandson?" Tayana hadn't spoken to Diane since leaving. She'd loved this woman, considered her family. "I don't know if that's a good idea. Please, baby, I need to see him. I need to see you." Tayana couldn't refuse. Diane arrived and pulled Tayana into a fierce hug. "Oh, sweet girl, I'm so sorry for what my son did." Inside, Diane met Walton and wept. "He looks exactly like Kendrick did as a baby." They sat together, emotional. "He told me what happened," Diane said. "What he said to you when you were pregnant. He was drunk. That's not an excuse, I know." Diane looked at Walton. "But I see him fighting now, trying to be what his father never was. That doesn't mean I have to take him back. No, you don't owe him anything." Diane met her eyes. "But sweet girl, I raised a son who buried his feelings. I know what suppressed love looks like. You can lie to him, to yourself, but don't lie to me." Tayana felt tears threatening. "If I let him in and he destroys me again, then make him earn it. Every single day, don't give him anything until he's proven he's changed." After Diane left, Tayana sat with Walton and allowed herself to think about it. Did she still love Kendrick? The Sundays, his face when Walton smiled, showing up exactly on time every week, sacrificing his business deal rather than break a promise, the therapy he'd committed to, the way he answered her harshest questions without defensiveness. And that night, not just the cruel words, but before, the man who'd held her when she cried, who'd remembered her favorite foods, who'd promised never to let her go, that man was still there, broken, lost, but showing up now, changed, fighting for his family. "God help me," she whispered. "I think I still love your father." She texted Kendrick, "Fine, couples therapy. I choose the therapist. Only discussing co-parenting." His response, "Thank you. I'll go wherever you want." Sessions became weekly. Progress was painful. Sometimes they fought, sometimes Tayana walked out. But they kept showing up. And every session, Tayana felt the wall cracking, not breaking, just cracking, tiny fissures where light was getting through. Then came the evening that forced everything to the surface. After a therapy session, walking to their cars, Tayana carrying Walton. The baby had been babbling all day. Then, looking at Kendrick, Walton said it. "Dada." Clear, unmistakable, his first word. Kendrick stopped. "Did he? Dada?" Walton reached toward Kendrick. The joy on Kendrick's face was pure. His first word is Dada. Tayana felt something break open inside. This should be joyful. Instead, it felt like confirmation of what she'd been denying. Walton loved his father, and she realized she was jealous. Not of Walton's love for Kendrick, but of how easily her son could love him. Walton didn't carry the weight of that night, could just love his father without complication. She wanted that freedom, that ability to love Kendrick without the pain. "Congratulations," she said, voice hollow. She walked to her car quickly, buckled Walton in. The baby kept saying, "Dada, dada, dada." Each repetition reminded her that love was happening around her. Walton loving Kendrick, Kendrick loving Walton, and she was the only one fighting it. That night alone, Tayana held Walton and broke. Real sobs that shook her body. Why him? Why do you love him? Walton looked at her. Dada? Something cracked completely, because she knew why Walton loved Kendrick. The same reason she still loved him. Underneath all the damage, there was a man worth loving. A man showing up. A man trying. She called Rochelle, crying. His first word was Dada, and I realized I'm jealous. Jealous that Walton can love him without all this pain. Because you want to love him too, Rochelle said gently. I do love him. That's the problem. The admission came broken. I still love him, Rochelle. After everything. That doesn't make you weak. It makes me terrified. What if I let him in and he destroys me again? What if he doesn't? What if he's actually changed? I don't know if I'm brave enough to find out. After hanging up, Tayana let herself remember the good. Kendrick bringing her soup when sick, reading to her until she fell asleep, him defending her to a rude co-worker, dancing in their kitchen at midnight, no music, just them swaying. She remembered the good, and realized she'd been so focused on one terrible night that she'd forgotten years of good nights before it. That didn't excuse what he'd said, but it complicated the story, that he was a monster, that he'd never loved her. The marriage had been real, then broken. Now maybe it could be something else. The next therapy session, Dr. Martinez noticed immediately. What happened? Tayana looked at Kendrick, then away. Walton said his first word, Dada. Silence. And how did that make you feel? Tayana took a breath, the moment she stopped lying. Jealous. Of my own son. Because he can love his father freely, and I can't. Kendrick was completely still. I remember who you were, Tayana said, looking at Kendrick. Before that night. Before everything broke. The man who brought me coffee in bed. Who remembered everything I said. Who made me feel like the center of the universe. Tears streamed down her face. I hate that I remember. It would be easier if you were just a villain. But you're not. You're also the man who proposed while making eggs, who cried at our wedding, who promised you'd never let me go. Tayana, Kendrick's voice broke. I did everything alone, and his first word is for you, and I realized why. He can see what I've been trying not to see, that you're here, showing up, trying. She turned to Dr. Martinez. How do I unhear what he said? You're worthless. It's branded in my brain. You don't unhear them, Kendrick said quietly. But maybe we build new words on top, until the old ones aren't the loudest. Tayana looked at him. I'm so tired. Tired of being angry, tired of pretending. What do you feel? Dr. Martinez asked. Tayana closed her eyes. Furious that you destroyed us. Terrified you'll do it again. Stupid for considering another chance. She opened her eyes. And like I'm still in love with you. And I hate all of it. Silence. You still love me. Kendrick looked shattered. Don't. It doesn't fix anything. But it changes nothing. Loving you doesn't mean I forgive you or trust you. It means I remember who we were before you broke us. I'm not that man anymore. I know, I see it. Every Sunday, every sacrifice. I see you trying. But what if trying isn't enough? What if I let you in and you hurt me again? Then you leave. But Tayana, I won't. I swear. You can't promise that. I can promise I'll die trying not to. They sat with truth finally exposed. I don't know if I can risk it, Tayana admitted. You don't have to decide today, Dr. Martinez said, but you've taken the hardest step, admitting the truth. Walking to their cars, Walton reached for Kendrick. Dada. This time, Tayana felt something softer than anger. You want Daddy? She asked. She handed Walton to Kendrick. Say, Mama, Kendrick prompted. Walton looked at Tayana. Mama? His second word. He knows both his parents love him, Kendrick said. They stood together, not quite a family, but not quite broken. Same time next week? Same time, and maybe Tuesday too, for dinner. Really? I'm trying, so stay Tuesday. That felt like everything. Chapter 10. The Terms. Revised. Tayana's call came on Tuesday evening. Come over tomorrow, alone. We need to talk. Kendrick arrived the next day, heart pounding. When Tayana opened the door, her face was unreadable. Come in. She gestured to the living room. Walton was napping. Kendrick sat where she indicated, not his usual chair, but the couch. Sit where you sat that night, she said. His blood went cold. Tayana, sit there. If you want any part of this family, you face what you did. Kendrick moved to the exact spot, the same couch from their old apartment, where he'd sat drunk and destroyed everything. Tayana remained standing, looking down at him. Tell me what you said. Every word. I don't remember. Then I'll help you. Her voice was ice. I walked in happy, shaking. I had the test in my purse. I said, Kendrick, I have something wonderful to tell you. And you looked at me like I disgusted you. Kendrick's eyes closed. You said, I don't want to hear it. I tried anyway, but you stood up and said, her voice cracked but she pushed through. You said, you're suffocating me. You're worthless. Get out of my life. God, Tayana, say it. If you want to be part of this family, say those words to my face. I can't. Then get out. He forced himself to speak, every word agony. I told you I did. And want to hear it. I said you were suffocating me. I said... His voice broke. I said you were worthless. I told you to get out. And I did. I sat in my car, cramping, bleeding slightly, terrified I was losing our baby because of your words. Her voice was relentless. I drove to a clinic at midnight, alone, scared. Kendrick was sobbing now. I went through the pregnancy alone. Morning sickness, weight gain, appointments where everyone asked about the father, labor, 16 hours with no one holding my hand. Then Walton was born, perfect, and you weren't there. I'm so sorry, I'm not finished. You missed everything. His first breath, first cry, the nights I walked the floors exhausted, his first smile, everything, because you told me I was worthless. I was wrong. You were a coward. Your father walked out, so you pushed me away first. You destroyed our family because you were too scared to fight for it. Yes, you're right. And now you want another chance. Tell me why I should give you one. You shouldn't. I don't deserve it. His voice was raw. But Walton deserves a father who shows up every day, even when it's hard, even when you hate me. And me? What do I get? Maybe nothing. Maybe pain again. But maybe someone who learned. Someone who knows what it costs to lose you. Someone who'll spend his life making sure you never doubt your worth again. Tayana was silent. Then, I can't forget what you said. Those words will always be there. I know. If we do this, if I let you back in, it's on my terms. Couples therapy as long as I say. You prove yourself every day. You put Walton first, always. And if you ever speak to me that way again, you lose us forever. I understand. This isn't reconciliation. This is probation. You're on trial for the rest of your life. I accept that. I'm doing this for Walton. Not because I'm over what you did. Not because love is enough. For our son. I know. But, she paused, I also still love you, and I hate that I do, so I'm giving you one chance. One. To prove you're not the man who told me to get out. Kendrick couldn't speak. Just nodded. You're not moving in. You don't get a key. You don't make decisions without me. You keep therapy. You keep showing up. And slowly, if you earn it, maybe we try dating, like strangers, starting over. Whatever you need, however long it takes. Years, Kendrick. I have the rest of my life. The baby monitor crackled, Walton stirring. They both went to the nursery. Walton stood in his crib, holding the rail, babbling. When he saw them, his face lit up. "Mama! Dada!" Tayana lifted him, held him between them. They stood together, not quite a family, but not quite broken. "This doesn't mean we're fixed," Tayana said over Walton's head. "I know. This means you get to try, that's all. That's everything." She allowed his hand on Walton's back, allowed the closeness, allowed possibility. "If we do this, we do it for him, not us." "Agreed. And Kendrick," she looked at him directly, "I'm risking my heart, my peace, my safety, our son's emotional security, so if you're uncertain, tell me now." "There's no uncertainty. I'm all in." Walton reached for Kendrick. After hesitation, Tayana handed him over. The baby settled happily. "He trusts you," Tayana said. "Don't make him regret it." "I won't, I swear." Late afternoon light streamed through the windows. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't even happy yet. Just a beginning, uncertain, fragile, built on broken trust and hard-won honesty. "Stay for dinner," Tayana said suddenly. "Not as my husband, as Walton's father." First time she'd asked him to stay. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm trying, so stay." Kendrick stayed. They ate together, awkward, careful, real. Walton sat between them, smearing food on his face, laughing. When dinner ended and Kendrick stood to leave, Tayana walked him to the door. "Same time Sunday? Same time Sunday, and maybe Tuesday too. For dinner, if you want." "I want. Then Tuesday." She opened the door but didn't step back. They were close. "Kendrick?" "Yeah? Don't make me regret this." "I won't. I promise you I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of this chance." He left. Tayana closed the door, leaned against it, eyes closed, heart pounding. Rochelle called minutes later. "So?" "So I'm letting him try. And I'm terrified, and hopeful, and angry, and in love, all at once. That's called being human. It feels like jumping off a cliff, or finally landing after falling." After hanging up, Tayana checked on Walton, playing with blocks. "Dada?" he asked, looking around. "Daddy went home, baby, but he'll be back. He'll always come back now." Walton seemed satisfied, returned to his blocks. Tayana sat watching her son, thinking about the impossible complexity of love and pain and forgiveness. How you could hold someone accountable and still give them another chance. How you could protect yourself and still risk your heart. She didn't know if this would work. Didn't know if Kendrick would really prove himself. Didn't know if she'd ever fully trust him. But Walton deserved the chance to have a father, and maybe she deserved the chance to see if the man she'd loved could become the man she needed. The door stayed open now, not wide, just cracked. Just enough for possibility. And that would have to be enough. For now.